This from Dave Canales, who's the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers. By the way, do you think anybody can identify him if you picked him out of a lineup? It's just really interesting. GM Dan Morgan and EVP Brant Tillis. One source says Dave Canales says this is his first big boy decision. From Tom Pelissero, Panthers head coach Dave Canales, speaking to reporters just now, says that Bryce Young will be the number two quarterback behind Andy Dalton on Sunday in Las Vegas, and the team doesn't plan to add another quarterback. Andy gives us our best chance to win. Now, there's part of it where you're like, look, this is just a this is just really kind of simply a chance for Bryce Young to step back and pause and look and see, you know, how it works. Watch Andy Dalton, who doesn't have the talent that you have, but he's been doing it a long time, and maybe doesn't have the arm strength you have anymore, but can still be effective. And at the end of the day, Dan Morgan, their new general manager, can sit there and go, "Hey, I've been the assistant general manager, but I got to win. I got to win now." He gives us our best chance to win. So too can Canales, their coach. But there's a lot of other factors that go with it, right? The coach didn't draft him. The GM didn't draft him, although the GM was completely part of the previous front office. But it's different when it's not your guy. When it's your guy, otherwise you look like you picked the wrong guy. Now they can separate and go, see, this is why we hired Dan Morgan, because Scott Fitterer didn't, pick the wrong guy. Yeah, I get it. I like it. I mean, I think anybody likes it. But what does it signal for Bryce Young? Um, and I'll just tell you, like, what we talked about the entire draft process is kind of what's played out. For people who don't know, Bryce Young went to high school at Mater Dei High School, which is in Santa Ana, and where before living in Green Bay, I mean, they played at the Santa Ana Bowl, 15 minutes from my house. I probably watched him play 15 games in high school, and one was better than the next. He was great. All the games were on TV, and then there's some really, really big games that went to in person. Like, he's a stud. And my thought in watching him, and then thought in watching him in college, was really, really simple, which is I get that it worked in high school. I get that it worked in college, but man, is he little. And, Kyler is little, but built like a brick. Kyler is little, but he's got sprinter speed. Kyler is little, but he's also got an elite MLB arm. Bryce has all of the pocket kind of quickness and foot speed, but he's not as explosive an athlete, doesn't have the plus arm, and he's just a little human being. And when I say little, I don't mean for you and me. He's slightly smaller than me. His shoulders aren't as wide as mine, but for the NFL, he's tiny, and he looks tiny. And this may not make sense to people, but there's something we talk about it all the time in basketball, which is it's not about being big, it's about playing big. It's not about being long, it's about playing long. It's not about being you can be little as a point guard, but you better emphasize your positives, not fall back on the negatives. And he just looks like his arm's not strong enough, doesn't look comfortable in the pocket, doesn't feel like he can see. I don't know if he's plus in terms of reading a defense. All those things you have to do. And then the other part to it is it's a little bit like USC football when these guys at Alabama, you got dudes around you at every position. And same thing happened at Mater Dei. You're going to look a little bit better than you actually are because they're going to pick you up. And the NFL, especially in the number one pick, you don't have better talent than everybody else. You got to lift everybody else up. And he doesn't appear capable of that. But if the question is, how long do you get to prove you can be a starting quarterback? As the number one overall pick, the answer is 1 year, okay, and 2 games. Yeah. I mean, the guess is he got back, he called his owner, called his GM, and he just said, I don't think he's good enough. I don't think we can win with him. And they gave him the okay to pull the plug. And, as much as it may look like Canales is a flip-flopper, it's about watching the tape, but it's probably about he didn't want to speak out of turn until he got to speak with his GM and his owner and said, guys, what are we doing? And they said, what do you think? And he said, I think Andy gives us a better chance to win. They're like, okay, you got to do it. As much as you're the head coach and you get to make the calls, you have to run it by people before you make the call. But you can't fool players. They know. He can't play. Just he's not good enough. You have to, if you're that small, you have to be so good at other things. And it just doesn't appear like that he is. And then the other part to it is, and this is a real thing, at some point you're going to lose your confidence. And if you're not supremely confident and supremely competent, this is what happens. And who knows? He could have gotten home and he could have gotten some veteran players like, coach, we can't do it. He ain't good enough. That's not a mutiny. That's just the reality. It's a business. We're in the business of winning games. The guys in the locker room think somebody else gives them a better chance. Andy Dalton gives them a better chance to win. Andy Dalton doesn't give them a better chance to win. Andy Dalton gives them a better chance to not lose. That's the reality to it, right? All of these young quarterbacks, it's not just that it's bad. It's like in Tennessee, right? Will Levis. Like, dude, you just can't take those chances and lose 2 games because of it. So I don't think it's nothing to do with personality. It doesn't have anything to do with off the field. There's no baggage there. It's like Tony Romo said when he retired and handed over the reins to Dak Prescott. Football's a meritocracy. And as much as there's been several really, really good Alabama quarterbacks. And Bryce Young is a great Alabama quarterback. He's just not a great pro quarterback. And frankly, right now, not playing well enough to be the starting quarterback in Carolina in the NFL. So Bryce Young benched, Andy Dalton in. The most we talked about in the Carolina Panthers since they drafted Bryce Young. So yesterday I got to go to Lambeau. And remember, like, time zones matter. 1 o'clock East Coast is a noon start time. Weather was amazing. Felt very much like a college atmosphere in that everybody in jerseys. And then, there's the uniqueness to, like, if you haven't been to Lambeau, it's exactly what you think, where there's just houses and then stadium, right? It's so different from some of these other ones. For example, SoFi, which, is $6 billion. And now they have the NFL office buildings and these massive, massive parking lots. And then in it, then you could take an Uber in there or whatever, but it's a long way in there. And yeah, it's in a neighborhood in Inglewood, but it's probably a couple hundred yards from any of the side streets from the parking lot entrance to inside of SoFi, whereas it's not like that with Lambeau. I did think it felt a little tourist attraction-y in that lots of Packer fans had sold their tickets to Colt fans or just football fans. There's lots of people from all over like, why'd you come to the game? Like, I get just come to a Packer game. Well, the weather's still nice. And the weather was incredible. So it was really cool. The stadium's a mix of old and new. The lower bowl is all old, like feels like it could have been out of the 1940s. And the upper bowl is really nice, and the club level is super. It's big, but not too big. It allows just enough of a breeze. It's at a different kind of angle. It has to do big monitors. Like, it's kind of got all the modern amenities while maintaining what it originally was in the lower bowl. And then, everything's blocked off around it, and you just park somewhere and walk to the stadium. And you may stop at a house party, or you may stop at a bar, and all the bars have music outside. It's just a very different atmosphere from anyone I've been to in the NFL.